I feel like I'm badly overlit and my face is all...
Good. You look good. You look good. Hey, friends. So welcome to DBC Live. We are so excited that you decided to join us again for a Thursday night free PD and a free book. This is like the best part about these lives, in my opinion. You get to talk to the author. You get to ask them questions. And if you put comments over in the comment section, you could win a free book. So super exciting. I will say I have been delayed on getting those free books chosen. So the good news is that when you watch it on the playback, we always give you until Friday morning. It's usually more like Friday evening when I really choose those winners. So keep the comments coming over there and you might be the next lucky winner. So today we have Starr on the show. Starr is one of my author sisters. I'm super excited about having her on the show. She is going to talk to us a little bit about switching roles within education from teacher to a leadership role, what that looks like, sounds like, feels like, some tips and tricks. So I hope that I know you are in for a real treat. But before we get started, remember, everything that you post over in the comments, like Becky's entering in, she's telling us, hi, Kristen, tell us who you are, where you're from, where you're, what you're doing, what your role is right now. That'll help later when we're answering questions. And also share something great that's happening this week in your world. You know, we're about to enter into Friday. So
I got my book.
That's something great that happened to Starr. She has our brand new book, Marisol. Super exciting. So Starr, while they are joining in, telling us who they are, why don't you formally introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about what you do and what your role looks like right now.
Okay, so I'm Starr Sackstein, and I am currently actually an educational consultant and the co-director of professional learning with the Core Collaborative. And I also am a publisher on the other side of their company, Mimi and Todd Press. But my position before this was the leadership role that I wrote From Teacher to Leader about. And I think that leadership was very different than I was expecting it to be. But there's so much potential. I know what made me make that decision, and I'm excited to share all that with you guys and answer whatever questions you might have about, you know, making that decision and those first couple of years in leadership, what that's like, and maybe help you avoid some of the pitfalls that maybe all of us fall into every once in a while.
Yeah, and Starr, I think in your book too, I feel like there's so many things that are transferable to other roles outside of education. So like you said, you are now working in a different role, not necessarily in the education system, but still leading in some ways. And there's so many things about what you talked about in from teacher to leader that I feel like transfers roles. Yeah. It doesn't necessarily have to be professions, and transfers professions.
Well, I mean, in my current role, I would say I consider myself an instructional coach. I work with teacher teams to help them get more impact through having conversations about building the formative assessment process into what they do. So, I mean, it really blends nicely with the work that I generally have been writing about and doing for for the last 12 years of my career. So it's definitely an honor to be able to work with the teacher teams that I work with now in the capacity that I do.
I absolutely love coaching too. I feel like once you get that down, even as a classroom teacher, even as students learning to coach each other, such a great skill because it doesn't really matter what role you end up in life. Coaching is something I feel like you can always fall back on. It requires those great questioning skills, and then also that active listening piece, and then helping to stretch people to new levels. I know I get to do that in my role now, working with authors, and absolutely love that piece. It's one of my favorite parts of the day is the meetings one-to-one with the authors, where I'm working with them and we're helping them to like figure out where they are emotionally, actually writing, whatever it is, and then how do we stretch them to the place where they want to be, the next place. So yeah, I'm super excited about that. So from teacher to leader, you talked a little bit about it in your introduction, but I'm curious, what were your big hopes for, before I ask this question, I still have it in my head, don't worry. I need to tell you, friends, if you're going to our website, which I know you often do, just click over to the website and you go look at the free preview of this book. And I know that is the way we do things. Please do not go to our website tonight. It is in surgery, and we don't want your computer to get infected. So it is having a little difficulties, but it is in stable condition. It's going to be fine in about 24 hours. So we have put the Amazon link, and Dave has so graciously dropped it in the comments, but it's also above or below this video, wherever you're watching. Click there to see your preview at Amazon rather than our website tonight. I'm so sorry. It'll be back and running in just a little bit though. So Starr, back to my question. My question for you is, when you wrote this book, what were your big hopes for the readers when they read this book?
I think I was really hoping that the opportunity to talk to folks who were thinking about it, because before I made the move, it took me a really long time to decide. Like, I never wanted to leave the classroom, even though a lot of people said you'd be so good as a leader. I was like, but I love the classroom. This is really where my heart is. I want to be in the classroom. But I think a lot of us who have spent 10 plus years in the classroom, you start thinking about how you could stretch yourself and grow. And I think in those beginning moments when you're trying to decide what's my next step, my initial hope was, can I help teachers make decisions about, do they want to stay where they are? Do they want to try a teacher leadership role? Do they want to go straight into an admin program? What does that look like? And how might that change the way that I feel about myself in this profession right now? So, I always just, in all the work that I do, my main goal is to just help people. I really want to just be able to make things easier. If people could learn from my experiences, and anyone who knows my work, I'm super transparent, the good, the bad, the ugly. Because it's real. You know what I mean? Like,
exactly.
This profession, it's a hard but rewarding profession. And I think we don't do anybody a service when we whitewash the realities of what happens in our spaces. So I think it was just really the first really personal book I ever really wrote about my own journey in that space. And I loved that I was able to use some of the blog posts from when I was actually in it. So like, you have the reflective part, which is the narrative of the whole book. And then this is the, oh my God, moments that were happening when they were happening.
Literally.
like literally on my blog, because that's what I always do. That's how I process. I write to process and share those moments when they happen. And I just, if I could help inspire somebody to make the best decision for themselves as possible, then that's my greatest hope with this.
Yes, I love it. And we have Kristen saying, part of me would love to move to more of a teacher coaching role, but I love the classroom. So I think, Kristen, you are going to find some real gems when we're talking to Starr a little bit, in just a few minutes, more about more of the shift. I know that, making the shift for me was early. I mean, I remember just early in my teaching career, our superintendent coming to me. It was wild. Hey, I think you would be a great instructional coach. And I was like, what? Like, I love school I love teaching so much. And I was still so new at it. I mean, my first 5 years. And I still cried when it was Christmas break because I didn't want it to be break. Like, I was still on the honeymoon phase, right, of teaching. And so moving into a coaching role, I was like, are you crazy? Like, I don't even think I belong there. But I had started taking this leadership academy and I was really loving it, with K-State. But that shift for me, I think because it was so sudden, I didn't really have a lot of time to think about it. But I remember thinking, when I got there in that role, it took me a good 3 months to fall in love with the role. Like, I was just culture shock, and I was crying to do the role. I was crying coming to work instead of crying at the Christmas break, having to leave work. I mean, because teaching is just my heart. Like, I was good at it. I was born to teach. I know it. And so I fell in love with coaching. Like I said earlier, I think it's just a great skill to have no matter where you go. And all of the different leadership roles I've had, that has really helped me working with and serving others. So I'm curious, what was your big first step? If you were sharing a little part of the book, I know it's kind of going to share a little parts and pieces maybe, but what was your big first step moving into leadership? And then what were kind of your feelings of that very first move?
I mean, I was in teacher leadership roles a lot prior to getting the position, but believe it or not, like I had been at the school I was at for like 10 years, and then I was an instructional coach at a different school for a year. And the hardest thing was leaving that job that I was at for 9 years, because that place was my home. The kids, the community, I had really become a big part of that community. So I saw the posting for this job that I wanted to take. I didn't have my license or certification yet, because I think I consciously decided never to get it, because I was like, I never want to be forced into that role without it being my choice. And I feel like sometimes when you get an admin license and you work in a city system, they exploit the fact that you have it and they know that you have it. And I didn't ever want to be in that position. So I read the job description. It was for the director of humanities. And I'm like, I could do that job. I could do it. And basically, like, I applied for it and very clearly wrote in my cover letter, I could do this job. I don't have an admin license. Like it was in my cover letter. And when I went for my first interview, I was very candid about it. And literally after my first interview, the superintendent who I was talking with was just like, how long would it take you to get your admin license? And I was like, I had not been planning to go back to school right now to go get an admin license. And sure enough, the stars all aligned, and I was able to get into a program like literally 2 or 3 weeks after we had that conversation. And, I was on like the fast track to getting my admin license, and I love to be in school. So that was like a great experience to go back. And when I finally did get the position, I think it was like a bit of a shock to go into a school building and not live on a bell schedule and have to go to meetings, and a little intimidating to be even though I had been a teacher, a high school teacher for 16 years by that point, it was intimidating to be in charge of veteran teachers who were older than me, who had been around a lot longer, I had so much to learn from in so many different ways. So like even just adjusting to figuring out what my leadership style was going to be, and really try to build trusting relationships with the folks that I was getting involved with at that school. And, I made a lot of blunders like right away, but I was very lucky to have 1 or 2 teachers who kind of checked in on me regularly and like, oh, just so you know, if this is what we do at this time, and like kind of gave me like the heads up of what I should have been doing, because I didn't know the culture of the school yet, and I was just trying to really get a sense. And since I was a district person, I was in all the buildings, K-12. So I had to learn the culture of all of the spaces, which was definitely different.
Yeah.
Definitely different for sure.
Yes, for sure. I would say moving from coaching then to district level administration, I was much the same. With ours, it was kind of, Dave and I talked about this on a podcast recently. And we talked about, how I didn't have the qualifications for it. You're supposed to be a principal for 2 years before you got into that role. So it did have a licensure, but it didn't necessarily have all their listed requirements. And I was just going to the interview for practice, honestly. I was like, I want to be a principal, so I just tried this interview. It sounded good, and got the job. And I was like,
I know.
Like, now
it's
what?
The same thing.
Yeah,
exactly. So now what? I was so relaxed because I had no intention of getting it. So
me
it was like,
too. I almost think it's better going in like that, because you're like, I mean, what have I got to lose? Like,
exactly. That's exactly.
And they're like, we need her. She's so real. Like, that's exactly what we need. And you're like, holy crap, like, what did I get myself into? And then when I had to like not supervise, but like actually, like you said, we had to do like walkthroughs and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I've never even been principal. Like, I feel bad that I'm in this role. But, it was all about, one of the things you talked about, I think is key, was about making connections and building relationships. And that you guys, teachers, everybody out there under the sound of my voice, you know how to do that. It's like the basics, right? We know how to do that. And if you know how to do that, you start to understand your people and how to serve your people. Mm-hmm. Then you learn the skills you need to learn to serve your people. That's just what we do as teachers, as educators, as servant leaders. And so I'm thinking, did you have any, I don't know, I'm sure you did. I'd love for you to tell us some stories about how you navigated, learning through the process. What did that look like, sound like, feel like for you, Starr?
So I was super lucky because I was getting my admin license at the same time. Like, I was in school actively, and for me to get through the program that I was actually in, I needed to be mentored by somebody strict. And my assistant soup of curriculum and instruction, who was my direct supervisor, was my mentor. So he really made it possible for me to have an open line to him whenever I had questions about things or if there was a misstep. Like, one of the things that was a really interesting shift for me, and I don't know if this was for you as well, but when I was a teacher in New York City, that's when I started blogging. That's when I started really using social media. And I was very transparent all the time. And my school leadership, I don't think, was acutely aware of a lot of my online presence. Not that I hid it from anybody, but it was not a concern. Right. It was not a concern. And when I switched over to this other position, the teachers union, the parents, everybody was watching. Like, before I got there, and then once I got there. And what I learned very fast is I'm not just sharing about me anymore. And what's the impact of me sharing my very personal yet sometimes challenging experiences, and who else do they impact? And how do I strike that balance of still being transparent Starr, who's very accustomed, like I said, to sharing those blunders with people and letting them know the real truth of what's going on without blowing the anonymity of the folks that I'm having those experiences with, because I wasn't looking to publicize anything that happened with the teachers. It was really more my struggle to figure out how to do it well and how to treat them with dignity and like make the whole situation work. But even when you there were a lot of things I was really good at right away, like the instructional pieces of it. I clung to the coaching parts. I looked forward to my monthly meetings. It was like the one class I got to plan a month. So I spent a lot of time going through walkthroughs, like taking a lot of notes, seeing what people were doing. I tried to model one strategy by having the meeting use the strategy and then let them reflect on what was going on. Like, I really tried to model what I was hoping to see in the learning spaces, and also start making small changes that wouldn't upend things. Until they knew me a little bit better, I didn't want to really shake things up too much, because I was already, for a conservative space, I was already definitely not conservative. I have a lot of tattoos. It was the summer still, so it's hard to cover all that stuff up. And then by December, my hair was purple, and like they were really getting the sense that I wasn't your typical administrator. And I really I wanted them to be their best. So, I would offer to co-teach with them. And at first I really think they thought I was crazy and that I wouldn't actually do it. I was like, no, I'll write lesson plans. I'll co-teach. I'll come watch if you want. And, it took one brave co-teaching pair to actually invite me in and watch how excited I got that they actually took me up on my offer. that, the word kind of spread from there. No, she'll really come in, she'll help you write the project, and then she'll help supervise when you're rolling it out. So I was in my best element when the teachers allowed me to partner with them in this space. And that was definitely my favorite part, to be around the kids and be in the classroom with the teachers.
Same. We have a lot of similarities, actually. One of the things we started doing in some of our PDs too, I led all of the teaching and learning department for our district. And Kristen said she didn't know I was a principal. I wasn't. That's the problem. I never was a principal. I have a principal license, but have never been one yet. But I moved straight into district administration. But one of the things we did is we started offering, basically they won a prize. Like the prize that they won at the PDs was for me to teach in their class for an hour. So 2 teachers each month. We had a small district of 7 schools, so it's pretty small. One, and I would come teach in their class. They could go to Sonic or do whatever. It didn't matter at grade level. I had K through 12 too. So it was so much fun. I loved it, but it did take a few, like at first they were a little nervous about me coming in there. Like, is she really going to be able to handle my class? It was actually my favorite part. And it was great too, rolling out, like you said, rolling out new resources. Yep. I loved it. So I was like, I'm going to teach language arts. I'm going to take 2 hours for you because I need to figure out how to do this and make sure that what we're writing in these guides are actually accurate and teachers can do it. So I'd literally get out there and I'm like, I'm going to just teach the whole reading block. And they're like, what? And I'm like, no, I really am. So just go, have fun. Or you can watch. They started loving it though. And I think that was a great way to build relationships too. Right? They start to, one, realize that you are instructionally sound. It's the one thing I knew I could do really well. And then 2, it was good for me too, leading those meetings at the district level and saying, you know what, I was in a kindergarten class the other day. This does not work. And I've taught kindergarten. This is not going to work. And so, starting to learn what we were putting on paper and making sure it actually matched. Our superintendent was so grateful because he didn't want to go out there and do it. And I was having fun with it. And the teachers were actually being rewarded for great things that they had done. So I remember that being a fun piece as well.
Yeah, that was the other thing too. Dawn had asked a question here, which is kind of connected to what we were saying about
into your face.
Yep. It seems some opportunities in curriculum leadership and coaching require building level experience. They don't require, in my experience, they don't require it. A lot of places ask for it, but I don't think that you necessarily require it. And this is something Tara and I were talking about before we got on. Like, no matter how prepared you think you are for whatever position you take on, you're never going to be as prepared as you need to be. Think about your early teaching. Like the first year you were in a classroom. And I think what makes being a seasoned teacher moving into a leadership role, you have all these years of experience under your belt and you're going back to square one again. Even though you have a toolkit that works, in a lot of ways, the way you apply those tools are very different now. So that really new feeling and that really underprepared feeling is one that you feel often, which is exciting but terrifying at the same time. And you kind of go in, and I was kind of saying this earlier, like my initial reaction as a classroom teacher is to kind of react really fast, usually when things are happening in a 43-minute period and I have to make something turn around. I kind of have to be on the spot to kind of make it a move. But in the leadership position, what I learned really fast is that making those decisions quickly was never a good idea. And I had to slow down. I had to take a breath. I had to really think about the situation, say to the person, I'm going to stop for a second. I'm going to get back to you. And instead of answering with my gut, especially in the beginning, because I did answer with my gut a few times and really made a mess of things, you kind of have to take that step back to get some kind of perspective. So I don't think the qualifications in terms of building leadership are necessity. I think you just have to be open to learning and try to kind of self-assess the gaps that you notice you need filling, and then find the people in the district or on social media or folks in your in your professional learning network who could fill the gaps for you to help you understand where you need to do the learning. Sometimes the bigger problem is you're not really sure where you need the learning.
I think that's really true, Starr. And one of the things that reminds me of is my first year at the district level office. I was so ready to like you said, just turn on a dime. And I remember talking to my superintendent. He was such a gem. He believed in me so much, but he didn't mind like sitting me down and saying, okay, we need to go slow to go fast. And one of the analogies, he knows that I love metaphors. He knew I love pirates even then. So he told me, he said, I'm going to give you a metaphor that I think you'll be able to relate to. And he said, in the classroom, you drove a speedboat. And so when you needed to turn, you turn. You saw a limb in the creek, you could turn, you could move around it, you could adjust on the fly, and that was fine in your little system. You could change it so fast, and everybody would be on board because you had 26 little minds sitting in front of you. That's it. But now he said, you are driving a pirate ship. And he said, and when you're driving a pirate ship, you have to turn one little dial, one little dial, one little dial, one little dial, and we might move a little tiny bit to the right in a year. And he just kept reminding me that you're not driving a speedboat. We can't get a whole system to move at the pace that you love to move. And so it reminded me a lot of what you're talking about, where you want to make these changes and you know what needs to happen. But first, all these little dials, building relationships, going in there, all this little stuff that you think really is taking forever. It's all those little dials. You just have to keep moving them until you can finally get that ship steering in the right direction. And it it was such great advice for me because it reminded me that I just cannot, like you said, react. There were many times I would get an email and I'm like, okay, I just need to sit on this, let them know that I'm thinking about it. I always try to let them know I'm thinking about it to make them not worry. And then think about it. And if I needed to, of course, go to him, say, Scott, help me out here. How do we move this pirate ship just a little bit at a time, kind of working in that direction. So if you were moving into leadership, I totally believe Starr is right on track with that advice. It's such good advice.
Thanks.
Yes. Don't answer with your gut. Just wait a minute. And most anything can wait a few minutes. I always think of it, take it all the way back to my waitressing days. As long as you let the people know that you're working on it, you buy yourself some time. So when the waitress never comes out, you know where your food's at, then you get mad, right? But as long as you know the cooks are working on it, it's coming in a little bit. I mean, you're not as likely to get so frustrated. So I think give them a heads up. Hey, we'll get right back with you, and then get some
advice
in a row before you talk to them.
Go behind a closed door and call somebody who could help and kind of take that moment to process a little bit of what's going on. I think I'm sure everyone listening has had a crazy experience in the classroom with kids where you kind of, I remember the first 5 years of teaching, some things that happened, I thought I was in the twilight zone. When you're in leadership, it's like that all the time. It's just, adults are very different learners than kids are. And even though there are similarities, there are different things. Like ego is a very big thing that you're dealing with adult learners. And I don't think people mean to have it there, but we all feel that, we should be honored, as we should. But, not everybody could be making the decisions. And I think sometimes it's more challenging being a leader in that regard and protecting the people on your team and making sure that they don't know what's going on behind the scenes sometimes, because you don't want them to have additional worries than what's actually happening in their spaces. And, it's okay for them to think like I thought, oh yeah, I could do that. I don't know what those leaders do. When I was a teacher, I was kind of flip about the whole thing, I could do so much better.
Yeah. Which is like parenting. Like you always say, when I have kids, like, they're definitely not doing that. And then you have a kid and you're like, holy crap, what just happened?
Yeah, that does
I'm
happen.
going to raise them to do that. I don't understand. It's the same way. And I think it's all about learning perspectives. And I feel like that's really what almost the underlying message of our talk tonight is, just getting to this place where you can actually try and hear the perspectives of all the different stakeholders, because that's really what it was. In the classroom, it's such tunnel vision. It's wonderful, but you really only have to focus on, you have to focus on a lot of stuff. I'm not saying only. I know you guys are killing it out there, but it is different because you can control your environment for the most part. But when you broaden your vision, I mean, you have so many avenues at that point, and it is really difficult to, like you said, you live kind of in this twilight zone just because you're constantly trying to figure out what are the perspectives of the people that I'm serving, and how do I try and meet all of them, or how do we find a happy medium? How do we move the system a little bit? And it's really challenging, but it's so doable. I feel like we all have the foundational skills to make this happen, to make this transition. Yep. And if we understand that we need to focus on the right things first, and then it will be just a more smoother transition. But you said it on the onset of this show, learning in the experience is really the best teacher.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. And I will say, like, one of the things that I struggled with the most in the beginning is you want to be friends with the because they're your peers on a lot of levels, like they're your age, they've been teaching for as long as you have. There's like a human need to connect with them on that level. And you want to be liked, but you learn very quickly you can't make everybody happy if you're going to do your job well. Just like parenting, to go back to that analogy, sometimes you make unpopular decisions, but they're the right ones. And I feel like if we lay the groundwork well enough and we support people through the discomfort of whatever changes are going to happen in that space, then we have this opportunity, even if, I'm not going to call it a tantrum, but even if there's backlash for the changes that occur when those decisions are made. Because a lot of times as teachers, we don't know the full context of what kind of, like, why the leader made the decision that they made. And I know that when I was in that position, I did everything in my power as much as possible to protect my team. So sometimes you're choosing between something unpopular and something that is going to add a lot of work to somebody. And you're like, all right, well, how do I make it so that there's the least amount of damage control that needs to happen when I make this decision? I know these people are going to be pissed off, but they'd be so much more pissed off if they knew what could have been coming down the pike if we didn't kind of turn the boat, to go back to that one too. And I think, in that regard, as long as you're always thinking about what's best for your team, what's best for what's going on, even if it's unpopular for a little bit, I think, your intention goes a long way.
So true. And like you said, it's the clear communication piece. I mean, of course we can't, I used to say that too. The district office, I just called them the district office. All of them were just one person, right? That's what I used to say when I was a teacher. And then I became the district office. Very cool. But there's so many moving parts. That's the piece. Yep. That I think a lot of times we don't understand. If you're not in that position, you don't understand all of those moving parts. It's so confusing. But when you get it all together and you have the whole district level team across the table, and we're all talking from all the different pieces, we're representing our perspective, me representing teachers, them representing budget or whatever they're representing. And you're trying to figure out, okay, what is the best move? What's the best next move? It always comes down to, like you said, the damage control, right? We don't want to cause much problems, even though everybody's going to think it's a terrible decision. But I think it went back to that super clear communication. So once the decision was made, like, this is our decision. And a lot of times we would use YouTube as our communication, as our communication, just so everybody heard the same thing and they could rewatch it 1,000 times if they needed to. but also going out to those buildings. Scott and I would visit those buildings and talk about, like, this is why we're deciding this. Now, we had multiple options here, but let me tell you, this is the best option for all the people involved. And trying to give them just an overview of why we chose that and how we're out for them. We're on the same team as them. And I think a lot of times that is the piece that's often missing, is that clear communication, because if teachers and leaders out there knew what was happening and why the decision was made, I think they would be a little less frustrated if they just kind of understood why.
It's true. I mean, it's the same in the classroom too, right? Kids will do what we want, like will participate with more engagement if they understand the why, right? Why are we learning this? How does this connect? Why do I need to know? And teachers need that too. Everybody needs it. They need to understand the context of what's going on. And I think sometimes the pace and the order that those things come in, like, you have to be patient, especially if you're middle management, so to speak. Like, I was a curriculum person K-12, but I wasn't at, the superintendent level or anything like that. They were above me, and there were building level folks that were the leaders of their castles in the buildings themselves. So I was in between those two roles. I had to interface with the principals at each building, and I also had to report back to district office on larger curricular choices. So it's a tough position to play all the moving parts. A lot of it is very political, which was not something I'm super awesome at, because I kind of wear it all here, and I don't have a good poker face. It's just not.
Yes, me either.
You could tell when I'm upset. So it's sort of, it is what it is.
It's okay. They call me the Living Emoji at DBC Inc. So I don't know if that helps.
I think that's awesome. Yeah.
I can make all those faces in like 5 minutes. Maybe 3. But yeah, this is such a great conversation, Starr. And I feel like a lot of people over here, I know Kristen was saying, like, this is fabulous. Where can I get the link? I need to rewatch it. I feel like a lot of people are just starting to hear from you with this experience. And if you want to learn more, From Teacher to Leader is a fantastic book. It's way more in depth than what we're talking about tonight. We're just shooting from the hip, different experiences we've had. But dive into the book and get a taste of what that is, and let it prepare you. Let Starr's experiences and what she learned from them prepare you. Like she said in the onset, her goal is just to help others. Like, we'd love for you not to make the same mistakes we made. Turn the pirate ship first instead of trying to drive a speedboat. I tried to drive a speedboat for the first couple of months, and I had a few teachers mad at me, a lot of them. So, once I learned, like, we can't move this fast, it's okay. I learned to slow it down a little bit. I think Dave's had to teach me that again in this role. I like to go fast. It's a terrible thing.
Yeah, I could empathize. I'm definitely like, I expect to know right now.
Come on, let's go.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Slowing down. There's a lot of moving parts. We can't move that fast.
That's true.
But yeah, thank you so much, Starr. If people want to find you, they want to find you on social media and they don't already follow you, where can they find you?
Okay. It's at Miss Sackstein on like everything. That's like the brand. So at Miss Sackstein on Twitter. My website is actually misssackstein.com. My Gmail, if you want to reach out to me that way, is misssackstein@gmail. When I was teaching, I just kept, how my kids got in touch with me everywhere and just made it what it was. So that's how you could find me. I'm very accessible. I'm going to be going through all these comments afterwards. And if there are questions, I'll try to answer them if we haven't answered them already.
Totally. I think we might have gotten most of them. I feel like I think I've put most of them up there, but they might have some more on the playback. So thank you so much for joining us, Starr. Thank you all for joining us tonight. And remember, if you're watching this on the playback, please do continue to put comments over in the comment section. Those will enter you to win a free book. We will be making that drawing tomorrow for this book. But if you don't want to wait and you're not sure if you're going to get the free book, just go up and click the Amazon link. Remember, we are not clicking the website. It is in surgery. It is not up. It's being operated on right now. And so don't click the website on tonight, which is March 25th. By March 26th, night, you should be able to click the website again. I just don't want anybody to get infected. It's like a computer virus instead of coronavirus, but whatever. We don't want to cause any damage out there. So thank you so much for joining us. If you're looking to join a leadership role, we would love to hear your stories. Maybe you're going through the interview process and you have some questions for Starr. You want to post them out on DBC Inc. Tag us. We would love that. And yeah, we're always out here to help you and serve you. So that's what we love to do. And thank you so much, Starr, for joining us. This is such a lovely conversation.
Thanks so much. I hope everybody has a good night.
Yeah, bye everyone.